lot of work has been put into this place. A lot of work has been done at this location, but I'm in favor. If this facility is no longer necessary, no longer required, I'm in favor of returning agents to the front line to continue to conduct enforcement operations.
Low crossings all across the U.S.-Mexico border. What Border Patrol is doing now, that processing centers are not in need. But at the same time, the federal government is moving military resources to the border and to the U.S. Gulf Coast.
By having them on the National Crime Information System, what they are doing is that police, they have more manpower to find them. But now the problem is gonna be that, okay, the police saw them in the system, but they have to call ICE and they have to see if I have people available to go pick that person.
And what happens when someone is pulled over by local law enforcement on a traffic stop and is found to be undocumented? Thanks for joining us again for another edition of Immigration Crisis, the fight for the southern border. I'm Yami Virgin with Sinclair Broadcasting in San Antonio, Texas. Lots of news at the border, and we are going to touch some of it during today's podcast. It opened up 2 years ago, the Firefly Processing Center in Eagle Pass, Texas. I was there when they opened, and now that their doors have closed due to the low numbers of migrants crossing into the U.S. through the southern border. We were there with Acting Chief Milton Moreno when their final ceremony took place. Okay, Chief Moreno, tell us about your feeling today as you were up there watching the flags come down one last time on Firefly.
Well, I mean, historic day. A lot of work has been put into this place. A lot of work has been done at this location. But I'm in favor. If this facility is no longer necessary, no longer required, I'm in favor of returning agents to the front line to continue to conduct enforcement operations.
When was the last time you had migrants in here?
It was at some point in the early part of last week, Tuesday or Wednesday of last week.
And what was that number that last day?
We had about 45 illegal aliens in custody at the time.
Okay, and at the height of it, I was here the day that you guys went online. At the height of it, what was the most number that you had in here?
Well, the facility opened in July of 22 to address a high volume of crossings that we had and illegal entries and arrests. That year we recorded 480,000 apprehensions. The most we've had in this facility was in December of 23 with upwards of 6,000.
So when you had 6,000 people in here, what was going on? What was provided? I think a lot of people don't have the correct image of what you guys have to do once you have people in here.
Well, first of all, the facility was built initially for 1,000 in custody. That number was modified after we made adjustments here to 1,125. When we had 6,000, it was overwhelming, but our agents continued to process, to provide the necessary requirements when it came to medical, and we continue to process and get them out of the processing. Again, this is a processing facility, not a long-term detention. So we continue with our processing efforts, and at the time had agreements with neighboring sectors to facilitate the transport of illegal aliens to be processed at other locations and get processed accordingly.
For you, the amount of manpower that you had here, what was at the most? How many agents did you have here?
At a peak, we had 250 Border Patrol agents assigned to the Firefly, and in addition to, we had 400 contractors. So altogether, it was 650 personnel working out of this facility.
So what did that mean out on the field? What did it mean out, on the line when you had so many agents working here and not out on the border?
We didn't have the law enforcement presence over the 228 miles of border that we have in our area of responsibility. So you can say that the border was completely wide open.
Were you here when you guys had no one at the checkpoints a couple of times?
Yes, so in December of 23, there was an 11-day span where we had zero law enforcement presence because all our efforts were concentrated either at this location here or at the Eagle Pass port of entry.
What was that like for you? I know for us it was freaky and we had to stop and we took pictures because we had never really seen it without you guys being there. So what was that like for you?
Very difficult moment for us because we joined the Border Patrol to secure our borders, to secure our nations, and at the time knowing that we concentrated on 1 mile of the 228, we needed to hold ourselves accountable, and we did not have an idea of who was coming into this country legally. Now, we made efforts and we continue to coordinate with other federal, state, and local law enforcement entities that assisted us in patrolling those routes of ingress and egress. But at the same time, the border was completely open.
For you, when you look back and you tell people about this place, how are you going to tell that story?
At the time, it was a requirement for Border Patrol to erect south-sided locations like this one. Other parts of the country did it as well, but it's no longer necessary. And the fact that we return our agents to conducting operations, patrol the river, and maintain security in the entire country and secure the American people, I'm all in favor and all in.
Do you think if this has to happen again, will any of this still be standing here, or it's all going to be gone?
As CBP and the Border Patrol will continue to assess, and if at some point that is a requirement, I have no doubt that we will utilize a similar path forward to address whatever issue or concern we have on hand.
At one point also, if I remember correctly, that day we were here, you guys had so many people that you had agents processing in other areas of the country.
We did. We had remote processing because, again, internally we could not sustain the amount, the flow of illegal crossings. So we reached out through headquarters, reached out to Northern Border Texas to assist in virtual processing. So we had personnel out of Swanton sector on the northern border, out in Havre sector and in Spokane sector to help out just to process and expedite that time in custody.
For people that don't understand, a lot of people will see you wear a uniform, they're just out there doing a job, but I mean, you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with moms, with children, with dads coming in with their children alone. That part of it also has taken a toll on the men and women of the Border Patrol. What's being offered to them now as things calm down?
Absolutely. It's a diverse group of crossings that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. Our agents have been resilient, and we continue to support each other, and the CBP and Border Patrol continues to offer those programs from chaplaincy to peer support and to continue to support one another.
It's difficult?
It is very difficult, but again, it is a job and a price we'll have to pay to continue to secure our nation.
Anything else I didn't ask you?
No, thank you for coming over. You were here when the facility opened, and now you're here at the closing of it.
It's bizarre to see it so empty. Thank you. With the change at the border with very low numbers of encounters, we wonder why the federal government is moving military resources not only on land, but also by sea. Our colleague Jordan Elder has more.
Crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border are lower than they've been in years.
Although we've seen a 93% decrease in illegal border crossings, we will not stop until we have 100% operational control of our southern border.
So even though fewer migrants are headed this way, more state and federal resources are headed this way.
It seems a bit of a mismatch in terms of the resources allocated as opposed to the reality on the ground.
Colleen Putzel-Kavanaugh with the Migration Policy Institute says we've seen the military deployed to the border before.
The additional weaponry, the additional resources are certainly a new development and something that, to my knowledge, hasn't been used before.
That includes a Stryker Brigade combat team with vehicles and air support. And most recently, a warship.
It's not only vital for the United States to have control of our border via land, it's equally important to control our territorial waters.
This is the USS Gravely, a guided missile destroyer now headed to the Gulf. With crossings so low, some critics say these steps aren't necessary. Putzel-Kavanaugh says the administration likely sees them as a show of force.
These additional resources would, sort of serve as a deterrent mechanism for people who may be considering migrating.
On top of all of that, Texas has sent their own specialized teams and is authorizing National Guardsmen to make immigration arrests. But will all of these measures be worth the money? Experts say time will tell.
It seems likely that at least for the time being, numbers will remain low, but it's hard to know if this is just kind of a blip or if this is a more longer term trend.
This week, some 700,000 administrative warrants were issued for migrants with criminal records to be picked up. We asked Congressman Tony Gonzalez of San Antonio more on these warrants.
I thought today was very important. The city of San Antonio and South Texas is a very special place, and it doesn't just happen on its own. Part of what we did today was have a roundtable with state, federal, and local law enforcement agencies from across San Antonio, across South Texas, across West Texas. Folks even came out from there as well. It's so important that we have partnerships. And once again, these partnerships don't just happen on their own. We have to work towards them. There's such good work that is taking place by all these different agencies. Some of the folks that were here today were we had the FBI in attendance, we had DEA in attendance, ATF, Homeland Security, HSI was in attendance. San Antonio Police Chief was in attendance. The Bexar County Sheriff's Office was in attendance, and then we had local areas as well. Some of the folks behind me, the sheriff from Valverde County, Joe Frank Martinez. We have other sheriffs from the surrounding areas as well. We've got police chiefs from Castroville and Hondo. I cannot stress this enough. They're all working very hard for one thing in particular: public safety. Their job is public safety, whether it's in Zavala County or whether it's in Bexar County, whether it's along the border, whether it's the city of Castroville. Everybody is focused on public safety. And that's what I thought was so incredible, to have this roundtable where we had this discussion of how do we make sure they're getting the resources that they need. Federal funding is a big part of what we're working towards. And then how are they promoting some of the wins that they've gotten? What I thought was also incredible was we had the DOJ. We had one of the attorneys from the Western District here. That district has prosecuted more cases than anywhere else in the surrounding areas. So it's not just about the law enforcement going out and finding these bad actors. It's about the prosecution. And I'll tell you what, the message is very clear. Not here in San Antonio, not here in South Texas, not here in West Texas. If you're a gang member, if you're a terrorist, if you're part of TDA or MS-13 or one of these other groups, not here in Texas. We're not going to allow that to happen. And that, once again, the only way that works is the men and women that have worked so hard at keeping their communities safe. I cannot thank them enough for attending today, for all the hard work that they're doing to make sure our communities are safe. And then from the administration standpoint, it's very clear. President Trump has made it a priority that public safety is going to be an importance. And I tell you what, there was no daylight today in our dialogue, in our meeting, whether it was state, whether it was local. We had DPS here as well. Whether it was federal, there was zero daylight between us. And what I thought was most important was the reason why there was zero daylight between us. It had nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do that we are all focused on public safety, whether it's public safety at the local level, at the state level, or at the federal level. So many of these folks are doing wonderful work. And today it was really about thanking them. So if you see a law enforcement officer on the street, tell them thank you, right? Whether it's in your own only hometown or whether it's state, federal level, they're doing amazing work for that. So once again, thank you everybody for coming out today. I'll take any questions if there's any questions, and then we'll wrap there.
What are some of the obstacles that these communities are facing when dealing with this gang activity and drug trafficking?
So, I represent 2/3 of the Texas-Mexico border, and what I've seen is over the last several years, this border crisis has just really boiled up. Now, you've seen the numbers go down, but it doesn't just go away. I think one of the things that was brought up today was the long-term impacts, right? Some of the people that may have had court cases but are loose in the community, they're not just going to give up themselves easily, if you will. It's going to take task forces. That was one of the things that we discussed today. These anti-gang task force, these anti-terrorism task forces. How do you pool local, state, and federal resources all together, utilizing different agencies and programs? HIDA is a prime example, where there's funding opportunities where you can go out and go after these bad actors. You've seen some of that happen throughout the country. I think you're going to see more of that happen here locally, where once again, bad actors are not going to be welcome here in San Antonio. Funding at the federal level, I'm looking at it through the funding, through the federal lens. It is my job to go up to Washington and deliver for us by bringing resources so the men and women standing behind me and that we're here today have all the tools that they need to be successful. It doesn't just happen on its own. We can't wish and hope for some of these gang members and these people that are terrorizing our communities to go away. It's going to be those that are rolling up their sleeves and going to work. And honestly, it's a lot of the police officers at the local level. It's the sheriffs at the county level. It's the FBI agents and the HSI agents and the DEA agents at the federal level. It's the DPS troopers at the state level. It is those type of things. When we go, we're all in this together. We're all rowing in the same direction. That is how we solve some of these problems.
Now, do we expect that for you to 6 months from now, a year from now, revisit and see what worked, what didn't work, where else worked, how can we go forward?
You know what? This is literally a daily conversation. I've spoken with many of the different agencies and individuals. Everybody knew each other today. This wasn't an introduction type of deal. It was just a catching up, and I think that's very important. You have to have constant communication. I also say this too. I recently hosted the vice president at the border. One of the things that we discussed was funding for some of these agencies. That's where it's so critical. My job is to go up to Washington and deliver funding for everybody. And I think in the reconciliation package here in a couple months, there will be an opportunity where that funding opportunity can be made real. Once again, as we tackle the border crisis, as we tackle public safety, you need resources to go along with it. Yes, is the government too large? Of course. Should there be cuts? Of course. Should we cut the fraud and the waste? Absolutely. But we also should be plussing up areas that work. And public safety is a priority. It's a priority for all of us, and we're going to make sure that the funding lines match up to that.
So now when law enforcement stops someone and run their information, if they have one of these warrants, of course, they would go to jail. But now also migrants who are here and do not have identification and are stopped, they will also undergo the same treatment according to the new laws.
It's concerning.
San Antonio immigration attorney Erinaldi Agosto is talking about the latest guidance given to San Antonio's two biggest law enforcement agencies. Records we obtained show San Antonio police officers and Bexar County Sheriff's deputies will contact Immigration and Customs Enforcement if they encounter undocumented immigrants with administrative warrants. ICE recently began entering hundreds of thousands of these civil warrants into a national crime database, something that wasn't being done in the prior presidential administration, according to Agosto.
Is that they added over 700,000 people that had to the National Crime Information System that they were not added before. And these people that were added are people that had deportation orders.
An email sent to SAPD officers this week says officers should contact ICE if they get messages like these, warning that the person was previously deported or has an outstanding order of removal from the country. BCSO, on the other hand, pointing deputies to their policy on immigration-related laws, which says people should not be referred to ICE unless they have a federal deportation warrant.
But now, by having them on the National Crime Information System, what they are doing is that police, they have more manpower to find them.
though both memos make clear that local authorities can't arrest on civil warrants alone.
But now the problem is going to be that, okay, the police saw them in the system, but they have to call ICE and they have to see if I have people available to go pick that person.
Agosto worries that it could escalate seemingly minor police encounters like traffic stops.
If they see a siren, they're going to get stopped. They can, they can just run for their life, and it can be a problem.
Friends, that is all for this week and another edition of Immigration Crisis, the fight for the southern border. In San Antonio, Texas, I'm Yami Virgin for Sinclair Broadcasting, where we continue to be the eyes and ears at the U.S.-Mexico border. Until next time.